Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sloppy Lab. I am JT Russell, and with me tonight is Quick Draw 34567. Oh, no, I didn't mean six. Quick Draw. Sorry, come back. I don't know if he's I don't know if he's coming back, guys. Well, it's a sure good thing that I have the wonderful Murph slash Fudginator here with me tonight to cover for my saltily departed co-host. How's it going, Murph?
It's going well. It is a slip of the tongue. Hopefully, QuickDraw recovers and is able to join for next week if if you two have made up.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me on.
Hey, this is an absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. And yeah, QuickDraw does not abide those sixes well. But we're super happy to have you here. Some sloppy love, some swindle love. But before we get into it, why don't you tell some of the folks who are listening, for the one person listening who knows who we are but doesn't know who you are, and that's my mom, right? Uh, can you tell her,
Yeah.
who you are, where we can find you on the internets, and what's your jam in the KeyForge scene?
Yes. Well, JT's mom, and ST Russell's mom as well.
Yes.
Um, I am Murph, otherwise known as Fudginator. My Fudginator is my handle on Twitch as well as on YouTube. You just search those in. You should find me. It's a blue logo with chameleons on it. I just made that up. There's no significance to that logo at all. Um, but you can find me there. I do mostly competitive gameplay. It's mostly gameplay videos. And yeah, I stream as much Keyforge gameplay as I do, and I host the Swindle Dust Chronicles with Karen and an occasional co-host. Recently, Zeramis and I, who's also a teammate, have been doing matchup watches on the Nordic Keyforge League for this season, season 20, and that's been a blast doing those. So yeah, give me a follow, subscribe on the Twitch, and hopefully I can see you next time I go live.
Right on, right on. I have been absolutely enjoying your NKFL matches. We'll talk about one of the decks in particular tonight, and there was a very memorable moment. We were just we were just discussing before we went on, but yeah, folks haven't checked out Murph's channel, do so please. There's some great stuff there, and I also have to give a whole lot of love for you for organizing and carrying the torch on the Kagi League. So for folks who don't know, Murph's running the show on the Kagi scene. Keyforge as Garfield intended. It's an adaptive best of 3 league. And we just wrapped up season number 7.0. 7.0. Yeah.
That's right, of which you were an honorary champion.
If we had
Now,
stopped the count at the
obviously,
right time, I could have
yes, you
walked away with the
did.
title.
Yes, you did. You drew first blood, and you called for the the bell to be sounded, and you are up there alongside Ashitaka as champion of Kagi 7.0.
I hope Ashitaka doesn't mind sharing the title.
Has no choice.
No, and our co-host who's in absentia this evening, who we're missing, Quick Draw, we have to say, was also a finalist for CAG 7.0, and they deserve lots of props. We had a couple other sloppy lab workers in the top cut too. I want to make sure I don't miss anybody, but Not Tonight was a semi-finalist.
Yep. So it was. I can rattle them off for you if
Oh,
you
go
like.
for it if you got it handy. And yeah.
Yep. So for the Slap Labworks, we had Not Tonight, JDG, and Quick Draw.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, JDG and Quick Draw got matched in the quarterfinals, and Quick Draw it was a part of the only 2-1s in the Kagi Top Cut. There was a 2-1 versus JDG. Quick Draw committed, you know, a little bit of civil war and murdered JDG and to move on.
A little
And
infighting,
then
as it
Not
were.
Tonight, infighting, yeah, exactly, for all the DT fans. And then Not Tonight lost, unfortunately, in the semifinals to their Kage arch nemesis Ashitaka, in a perhaps a unfortunate but very Rector showing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know we'll get into some adaptive discussions here too, but it's an interesting one. There were a lot of 2-0 games, 2-0 results in the Kagi Top Cut first round, right? There was only. Would you say there was only one 2-1 result? One or two?
There's two. There's
Two.
two 2-1 results.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, especially at this level of competition, and I mean, as you were saying, kind of before we got on, these are all veterans of the format, veterans of the league, and there's absolutely no shame in a 2-0 result. I mean, you look at a 2-0 result, and even I think Garfield at one point describing uh, how you could kind of balance a Keyforge matchup said, two games, well, even if it's perfectly balanced, is going to go 2-0 half the time, so you got to play a handful of these. And that's another reason why I also say, spiking an event, spiking one league is great, but I really, really kind of give a lot of props to the folks who are consistently making the top cuts and making it to the top tables. So yeah, you look at Ashitaka, who's on their third final showing. Is that right? And
Let me I can get you that because we have the in the pods now. There has been I have added and there's a new one called Historic Top Cuts. And Ashitaka, I think, first joined the league in season three. I could be wrong about that, but I think they first joined the league in season three, and since then they have been a part of every. Okay, no, so they're season three, season six, and season seven. They are part of the Top Cut.
cool, cool,
So three appearances, which is very impressive.
right on. And yeah, Quick Draw also no stranger to the top cuts. Not tonight, no stranger to the top cuts. Um, and I have to give a plug to Zoc and DataForge Stream, who actually covered the finals game along with Zach Armstrong. So definitely also check out Zoc's channel, DataForge Stream, twitch.tv/DataForge Stream, and check that out. Great match. It was a great match. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was the final. The finals was phenomenal. That was Ashitaka and Quick Draw did not disappoint. That was three very entertaining games, and the last game is a nail biter.
Yeah, it doesn't. Well, I don't want to give too many spoilers. No spoilers. Go check out the game. Go watch the game, and then, yeah, there was some good drama. It came down to the wire. It was super exciting. It was super exciting. I mean, obviously
Yeah,
we can spoil the winner. Ashitaka won, but the culmination of the game was just kind of a beautiful thing and super well played on both sides, I thought. Yeah.
yeah, there was a lot of very small, this like important decision points, and I think it was, I know Quick Draw is saying that there's some moments where Quick Draw, and I know the interviews afterwards was also quite well done. Um, so definitely small decision points and very well played from both players.
hmm I've been really enjoying the post game interviews. So that's been a great feature. I hope that gets kept up. But so I don't know. Props to you. Props to Zoc. Props to Orion and Zach Armstrong, who did a lot of heavy lifting as well for some of the streaming of the Top Gun games, at least from what I caught. But hope that keeps up because it's been a really great addition, and I think the format deserves to be trumpeted. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean it was definitely my goal. I tried to do it a little bit last season, but with me taking over, it's one of my goals is to have it be a bit of a the Top Cut to be a bit of a spectacle, be a bit of a um, thing that people who are because unfortunately there's lots of great players, not all of them make it to the Top Cut, and I know as myself as a player, I love even if I don't make it, getting to follow along with what's happening during the downtime of the league.
hmm
So picking a player, rooting for them, seeing how it's going, and I all I did was organizing and scheduling, but the streamers and everyone who helped, and if someone who's listening to this is interested in casting and streaming for next Kagi, please reach out to me on Discord. Murph hashtag 8591 is that, but you can reach out to me. We can have a conversation, and maybe you can be part of the team for next week because what I'm looking for is just people to uh, give this wonderful format and these great players some exposure.
Cool. Well, the energy and enthusiasm that's been going into it is really appreciated, and I'd love to see it. And speaking of Kagi 8.0, and wait, whoa, 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 we always do a little bit of pronunciation on this show. Do you say Kagi or Kagi?
Uh, Kagi.
Kagi. And do you
Yeah,
know
I'm Canadian, so our A's are typically hard.
Kagi? Okay,
Yeah, so it's pasta. It's not pasta. It's pasta.
pasta. Do you know how they decided how to spell Canada?
Yeah, well, it's an Algonquin word. So it's an indigenous word that means big
No,
village.
no, 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 no. They put a bunch of consonants in a bag, and then they pulled them out one at a time. And they
Oh
said
yes.
CANADA.
Oh, you got me. I was like,
Got him.
that's a classic, but it got me.
Nice, nice, cool. I'm looking forward to 8.0. I'm still waiting. What are the dot numbers? Is there going to be is there maybe like a 8.5 at some point, or you know, or is the
Did you not get any invites to this?
this is awkward. This is really awkward.
This is a little awkward. We'll edit this part out.
Yeah, I'm gonna edit this out. Edit this out for sure.
Yeah, I'll sweep that under the rug.
Cool. Yeah. So when's 8.0?
8.0 is starting on June 4th. It's slated to start on June 4th. So the signups are now live. You can find the. Oh, I was just saying I should post this on Reddit as well. Um, but I was just that you can find the sign up form in almost all of the Discord announcement channels that I could find.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically under the Sanctimonious Discord under #Kagi, it has its own channel. It's going to be there in the pins. I've made an announcement. It's a Google form. You go in there, you sign up. The things I'm looking for really is just your Discord name. You need to join the Discord. Tell me what time zone you're in because I try and match people so it's fairly easy scheduling. Which actually is an interesting byproduct of that is we get regional. We're almost getting regional competition, international
Mm-hmm.
competition, where it becomes like it's the North America versus Europe versus you know
Yep.
the more oceanic regions.
Yep. Yep.
So some regional disparity happening there, which I think is interesting.
That is interesting. I always put in whatever time zone. For one, because I hopefully it helps with the pod creation. Um, but also, I don't know. My schedule is weird, and I find that like the like Central European time folks tend to be really easy for me to make games with for whatever reason. But
Same. The hardest people for me to schedule games with are the West Coast people.
Pacific time, the worst. I'm looking at
Yeah,
you in the chat. Pacific time, worst.
yeah. Pacific time is very difficult to. One of the hardest people I had to schedule a match with was Gorlami.
Oh,
Not fault of their own. It just was like, they're like, oh, I can play around like 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. my time. And it's like, well, it's like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. for me.
yeah. It's
So
tough because they're all getting off work or just wrapping up dinner or like putting kids to bed, and you're like, yeah, it's midnight. Like okay, um, but
yeah,
and that makes it tough too because I'm also playing in the ABR League, which I absolutely love. ABR League is awesome. I highly recommend it. It is Pacific time centric, so uh, there's kind of a directive to be playing at Pacific friendly times, and also to avoid weekends if possible. Right, so we do leave Saturdays as an option. We try not to schedule games on Sundays, and we try to play at Pacific friendly times. So yeah, there's some kind of midnight games, but it's a lot of fun. And yeah, so tongue in cheek, love you West Coasters, but your time zone's the worst.
yeah. It is hard. It's genuinely difficult to schedule with them.
So you're on the
They're
other
not fault of their own.
side.
They get being living on the West Coast. So
So you're on the other side of Canada as JDG, I suppose.
I am. I know JDG is Vancouver, not
Mm-hmm.
Vancouver. He's in BC.
He's BC. Yep.
I don't know. I don't know specifically where.
I do. I just sent him some mail, but I don't know if I don't know. We won't dox him on.
I won't dox him. I
Yeah.
won't dox him.
Cool. Well, looking forward to Kagi 8.0. Seeing some love for our West Coast folks in the chat. We do love you too. Uh, indeed. And yeah, make your way over to the ABR server if you're not there. I have an awful lot of show notes to put in already, but we'll drop this on Reddit as well. I think maybe if we can get some more exposure to the Kagi League, that'd be fun because it's a great format, especially if you're just getting into the game and find that you only have a handful of decks and are looking for a format that lets you compete at the highest levels or against players of the highest caliber, but without decks that are necessarily uh, knocking over the triple digits on the SAS scale, as it were. For
Yeah, and I think, the nice thing about adaptive is, there's at the beginning of the league document that has information, more specific information about it. There's a quote from Richard Garfield that they like to take a deck and try and win with it, rather than taking a deck that has the best chance of winning, which is the heart and soul of adaptive in that every Keyforge deck is a viable adaptive deck.
mm-hmm.
Now, I think we might get into a little bit of like, what makes a good one, but every deck in Keyforge is a good adaptive deck because all it really requires is that you enjoy playing it, you're familiar with it.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
even you don't even need to be familiar with it. You can just bring it and play it. It's also a great way to learn new decks because you get to see yourself play it and see someone else play it.
yeah, totally. I love watching, and I've gone on a bit of a journey on this topic, but I now love watching other folks play my own decks. I think it's a great way to get insight into a deck because uh, actually Aurora had a nice post on timeshapers.com earlier a week or two ago about the affinity that you might have for a specific deck. Um,
Yes, a good article.
Good article, and I think the flip side of that is that sometimes we have a deck that we look at a certain way, and it can be very revealing to see somebody take it for a spin differently, as it were, um,
Yeah.
which is something that you get the benefit of in an adaptive setting, um, and can be hard but valuable lessons or information to glean playing a deck on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have personally have experienced that, and I've learned some very valuable lessons about my own decks, seeing other people play them.
Totally. I may have one or two specific examples as we get along, but I think maybe that's this is what happens without quick draw. We fall apart. This is what happens. You leave the
Yeah,
the comedic relief in
the
charge.
wheels have fallen off the bus already.
Yeah. So today, 20 minutes in, we're talking about this is a double-sided artifacts episode, and we have a DT aficionado, a lover of DT, and so we picked with Murph a DT double-sided artifact, and that is Dry the River. So that's going to be a point of focus, but also Dark Tidings generally and how it fits in with adaptive. So these are kind of all on theme and on topic, and there's going to be a lot of interconnectivity between those kind of themes. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
No, go ahead. Go
I was
ahead.
gonna say. So why don't we go right to then? Like what do you play in adaptive mostly? What's your go-to deck? What did you play in Kagi 7.0 or yeah,
Yeah, so I mean, over the past few seasons, I didn't play last season, unfortunately, just because
right,
I
right.
was um I wanted to focus on organizing it, so I didn't want to get caught up in playing as well and
The
run out
man
of time
behind the
because I was a
curtain.
little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I did play this season, and I didn't play. I have a go-to adaptive deck. On my channel, there's lots of Kegi gameplay of me playing that adaptive deck. If you are curious what that is, called Bob with the Bright. Um, and since then, I've sort of been trying out a bunch of things, seeing like sometimes I just want to test a deck. Most recently, I've been playing playing my favorite deck and a deck that I'm very familiar with, which is the Crude Soothsayer Judge. So I played that actually the back half of Kagi. So played 3 games, 3 matches with that. I actually won all. I think I won all 3, which was maybe a promising start of Judge's adaptive career, as
Mm-hmm.
well as its Archon career. But yeah, I mean, I like to play first and foremost either AOA or DT in adaptive. Any other set, I'm probably not bringing any other set ever to adaptive.
Bold words. Oh, sets we know about now. Sets we know about now.
That's true. Woe might change that. Grim Miners might change that, and whatever the next set after that is. But right now, I really love Dark Tidings and AOA, and I love what they bring to adaptive as a space.
Yeah. So I mean, dig into that a little bit for me. What is it particularly about those two sets that draws you to them for adaptive in particular?
Well, the main things is that I think AOA, Dark Tidings has more of this than AOA does. But Dark Tidings interacts with games on different axes than other sets do, and
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes has, because of its reliance on 3 card combos and sort of the smaller synergies within a deck, the game plans are often a lot less tangible just looking at Archon list or picking up for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I find that with AOA too. I find that, like when I play AOA sealed or Dark Tidings sealed, I look at the Archon list and sometimes I'm playing, I was like, oh, this is what it does. Like you're going through turns just saying, oh, okay, I play a game or two, I'm like, oh, okay, I understand now. Whereas I don't really get that feeling with MM, Coda, or Worlds Collide.
Mm-hmm.
There are really high SAS Worlds Collide decks that function really oddly that feel that way. Clark, the Mechanically Calculating that I played for the Archon's Corner Fire Assault Frenzy league, that was one of those decks. And that actually played very similarly to Judge, just in a really odd way. Um, but for the most part, I find that, and consistency and ease of playing is also a strength in adaptive, because you know exactly what the deck's going to do every single time. But I really do like the slightly trickier and more nuanced gameplay that Dark Tidings brings to adaptive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that resonates with me really well. I think Worlds Collide and Coda and MM. I think it's a lot easier to, and I guess my opinion, maybe yours as well, but from what you're saying, but a lot easier to look at an Archon card and be like, yeah, this is pretty good, or I can see what it's doing. Like, yeah, there's 3 tributes and a 6 Semper or Imperial Scutum in exile. Like, okay, that's what we're doing, right? The
Yeah, no, exactly.
the big heavy hitters kind of jump out at you off of the Archon card, or you're like, yeah, there's 3 Kirby's, a bunch of actions, and a runaway board state that's potential, that I'm going to get to from all of this efficiency. Um, Whereas for AOA and DT, it's a lot harder to look at the deck list and say, well, one, is this good, but two, kind of as you're saying, like, what is it even trying to do? Like, what's the game plan? I'm not
Yeah,
always
how does this
100%
thing
sure.
win games?
How does it win
Yeah,
games?
yeah.
Well, maybe that's what the DT detractors say about not being a very good set.
Well, maybe, but the problem is they haven't spent the time with the decks to really figure them out.
Mhm. Well, this is an interesting point. I would argue that the de facto or default kind of best Archon or easiest to find good Archon deck type out there is Crush. Like, I think if you
Yeah,
if you're like, you don't know what else to do, just bring something with Crush, and produces them pretty well, right? I'm just gonna keep blowing
yeah.
up the board and jamming pips, and and I don't know if does DT match. Like, I feel like DT has a tough time matching up against that with the decks that are in the category of like, is this good or not? So I think you can find a lot of decks that are like, yeah, I kind of need to just put 2 or 3 creatures on the board and then do a thing. But if your board keeps getting imploded, maybe that's tricky. I don't know. Is that fair?
It's sort of MM's a tricky topic on its matchup into DT,
Mm-hmm.
because it does suffer the problem of it has like it has because DT, as I'm sure everyone listening has experienced, can struggle with creature control.
Mm-hmm.
And MM has 2 main archetypes in it. Number one is Crush, where they're just, as you said, blowing up the board, generating amber, however they're doing that, or they are flooding the board repeatedly. Um, and both those axes can be a little bit problematic for DT. Um, Now, I think DT has some interesting ways of dealing with it, like Mooklings and Doorstep to Heaven, Bring
Mm-hmm.
Low. I think and there's no amber dumps in Dark Tidings, which is sucks. A Ludo and Saurian would have gone a long way,
Yep. Yep. Totally.
but I think there are tools to deal with that. And then there's a lot of DT rush where they're happy to get their creatures back and discard for like Witch of the Dawn stuff, or you know they don't have like a Grim Reminders as card, but they're generally happy to get their creatures and discover whether it's Brens from the shadows or whatever.
Yeah, I know Quick Draw would probably right now tell us about Anakim, which is a very very spicy DT rush deck that features probably one of the better Ritual of Lives that I've ever seen. But it's sort of a poster child for that, like, yeah, toss it in the bin. I don't care. I'm gonna get that Bren back with Ritual of Life or that Key Frog back and keep cycling through for value.
Exactly.
Just super cool. And actually, the Kagi or finals game featured a deck with double Evil Witch of the Dawn and the Hings Gross, and we saw some nonsense with that go down at one point too.
Some gross plays.
Some gross plays, evil with that evil Chelonia too. And
Yeah.
and I also have to pinch hit for Quick Draw here and plug one of his NKFL decks that's been doing well this season, featuring Evil Witch of the Dawn, which is super cool. So yeah, I totally kind of agree with what you're saying there. And I want to also go back to what you kind of mentioned before about but the board control in DT decks generally. And I think this kind of plays into your larger point too, which is, it's not like I can look at the board control suite of, let's say, even Bobeth, right? Bobeth, the Bob?
Bobeth, yeah. I like to.
Bobeth.
It's Bob F.
Bob Eth. I like it.
Yeah.
But you see the number and you're like 15. You're like, all right, cool. Boards ain't no thing. But you're like, well, Maelstrom, am I playing that every time? Selective Preservation, like I'm gonna have to do some work to maximize. Abandoned Ship's awesome. And then we start talking
Yep.
about things like Dry the River and Bubbles. So I think some people would look at this and be like, there are things that are situational. I don't love it, and that's kind of where they stop. But I think, especially in the lens of adaptive, you can look at this suite and say, no, there's a lot of room to maximize your value by leading into them strategically throughout the game, and not just taking each card as a one turn kind of deal. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, when
And one of the things I love most, one of the things I look for in adaptive decks is decks that you really have to manage the resources of. Where,
Mhm.
maybe it has one big creature control card, and if you use that in the wrong time, you know, it's a big irreversible decision point that might cost them the game. You know,
Totally.
letting your opponent make mistakes is one of the hallmarks of a good adaptive deck.
Yeah. I'm reminded of Lonely Cadell of the Forest, which is not really relevant to the conversation, other than that there's really just static charge and selective preservation for its board control. Everything else is kind of just for show. But when I'm playing this deck, it's not like, oh, here's the selective preservation turn, I'm going to reset the board. It's lots of turns leading up to that. I'm thinking about,
Yeah.
what are the different powers that are represented. And even infighting is a great example too, right? It's not like now I have my infighting and like things are good. You're thinking about infighting pretty much constantly as you make
Yeah.
fights and play creatures. Yeah.
And that, that's a boon also, because I mean, like, I Judge, who I already mentioned, but it's because I play that deck so much and it has infighting. I am constantly in my head playing around infighting when I'm playing out boards, regardless of whatever deck I'm playing. The 2 is always going to the left of the 3, and that's just like, how my mind is now wired. But no, it is something where it's almost like it's a little bit like playing with a Coward's End, where just the fact that it exists and it can come out at any time creates a lot of existential pressure on both players to make sure you're trying to manage your battle line, damage, and all that kind of stuff on everything to make sure that it's as one-sided as possible.
Yep. Yeah. So definitely potential to break the symmetry if you're really thinking into it or thinking about it. Um, I have I guess in the same vein, um, a DT deck that I brought to the Keyforge Premier League, which met an untimely end, unfortunately. Um,
Yes, that was I think it had probably it's one of its worst matchups in the whole league.
yeah, uh, but this deck is just a beautiful specimen of DT pips, DT pips on display, triple strange ordination, and 23 pips in total, including those. But yeah, met up against the Infurnished Recursion engine of Doom, and that was kind of what we wanted to avoid. But
And I believe I know you have affectionately referred to this as a sort of a smaller version of Combo Greaves, which is one of your signature and favorite decks as well.
totally, and a deck that I consider, among the best ones that I have. So like, it's no, I don't say it lightly that these two could be I could be doppelgangers and that their stats are mirrored. So I look at the 74 number, SAS number that Q Westfall, the seasonal gully, the DT deck in question, is given, and I think it definitely punches higher than that. Um, uh, and often, very, very often, gets a ton of value out of the Grand Melees, um, for two reasons. One, because as the player playing Grand Melee, you have a lot more control than you'd think to orchestrate kind of one-sided play from them, and it's just not a thing that a lot of people play around, right? Especially if there's infighting there. Folks will see infighting, and at this point, are a little bit wary of setting up, one-sided infighting plays. But that in combination with something like Grand Melee, kind of, it's tough to do both. And if you're the one playing them, you have obviously the control of when it happens. But if you're not, it can really lead you up to these being very one-sided effects. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And this is a DT was a set that I don't think Tactical Officer Moon is in DT.
No.
But this was if they were to print Tactical Officer Moon in any set, it would be this one for all the battle line, matters stuff that is in this set.
Yeah, totally. There are a few reprints that would have been really cool. Officer Moon would have been great. Like Thorium Plasmate. I don't think Thorium Plasmate got a reprint in DT, right?
It did not. No.
No. Thorium Plasmate continues to disappoint. I feel like with Thorium Plasmate, I either want it in Dark Tidings or I want it to be able to hit my own creatures and move them around. But like,
Yeah, well, the problem, it goes back to the Seek problem in Dark Tidings. But if you want Dark Tidings and logos, it's Astral Seaborg or Final Analysis.
mm-hmm.
That's pretty much it.
Interesting. Yeah, the C is pretty weak there. I guess think twice is your best is your best option.
Brain Eater.
Yeah, yeah. Brain
Yeah.
Eater fights, and Final Analysis, another very fiddly or very, I don't know, finicky board wipe option, which presents a lot of questions and room to misplay into in a round.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. No. It's I don't actually. Personally, I know it's considered a board wipe. I don't consider Final Analysis a board wipe. I consider it a combo piece.
Combo enabler. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I have one deck where I look at Final Analysis as a board wipe, um, but generally I'm with you, and maybe that's not fair because in that deck there's also phase shift and punctuated equilibrium, so maybe that's more combo. I don't know.
Okay. Well, yeah. I maybe not though. You're taking advantage of some synergies that is there, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, but it's fun. But yeah, definitely fewer just cut and dry board wipes. So I can see that being a thing that leaves some folks, I don't know, less enthused. But especially in the lens of adaptive, I really like that it presents opportunity for familiarity with the deck and some very forward looking playing to really pay out dividends in the match over a long term. Because we talk about maximizing your play for a given turn, but it's one thing to look at your hand, look at the board, and leave yourself with kind of most amber potential at the end, right? But it's another to say like, no, I'm going to take a turn to do some handcrafting, or I'm going to take a turn to do some battle line shaping, and not necessarily generate lots of amber or even move a ton of cards. Yeah, and I
yeah.
I think DT really rewards that type of play more so than some of the other sets.
Yeah, and I also think the efficiency in Dark Tidings is very different than something like what we've seen from Logos in the past, especially in MMM, um, where a lot of the efficiency is muddy and awkward.
Hmm.
Stuff like, you know, there's no autoencoder in logos, so that's a common in MM. You can't just chuck things to the wind and you get a free archive off of them. But you obviously have some very powerful ones in phase shift. There's theory of conjecture, which is wonderful. Mobius scroll got a reprint, which is great. And then there's other things, but there's less of I draw cards and I play more cards and snowballing draw effects. It's a lot of archive and play off the top,
Yep.
which is slightly less, which is a little less snowbally than what we see in something like MM, where you chain draws all the time.
Yeah, dropping autoencoder, Cronus, and eclectic deck getting downgraded to effectively lose a pip. I don't know how
Yeah,
often the wormhole side of theory or conjecture gets played
when you're desperate.
when you're desperate, or when you're building up to an honor schisis. Yeah,
Yep, there are reasons to do it. There are certainly reasons to do it.
yeah, they did. I think they do tend to fall into the like, please answer, be live on top of my deck.
Yeah, that's usually what it ends up being. Well, the problem is like it's not having a pip. There's no reason to play off top, right? I mean, even if it's a money archive, tucking two things away for the potential of potential later is always going to be greater,
hmm
unless like you're really digging for an out.
Yeah, yeah. I think I can count. Mm, definitely toward building towards an honor schisis or for a Hail Mary play, but I feel like it's very very rare that I'm just playing theory or conjecture and saying, yeah, give me the top card into play now. Hmm. Interesting. Yeah. It's one of those like modals, but not really.
Yeah. Yep. No, it is. It's very much like that.
Cool. Cool. So we've got Bobeth and Bobeth. I keep saying Bobeth. I like
Yeah, it's
finished.
not like the T.
Not like the Boba Tea or the
Yep.
or the Boba Fett.
More like Boba Fett. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Or the Bobbeth the Bright, Bobbeth Fett the Bright, Bobbeth. I like it. I got Bobbeth in there. Um, so this has been your go-to adaptive of late,
Hmm.
and does feature Dry the River. So Dry the River again, prominently listed among your creature control in here. You've got 4 Tide Manipulators. The Cocoa is less reliable, maybe. Um,
It's not necessarily it's less reliable, but with how the deck operates, you want it to live usually.
you're really kind of like valuing the. Are you valuing the taunt on it?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, which is also, I mean, because of Dry the River, that if that Dry the River's out, Cocoa is more likely to live.
Mm-hmm.
So it's given a little bit of effective power there and protection to some of the important creatures.
Cool. And is this a card that you typically? So do you think of Bobbeth as a Dry the River deck, or is this more of a deck that has Dry the River in it?
So Bobbeth is usually a Dry the River deck.
Okay. Okay.
It doesn't have a ton of speed itself. I actually don't know if it has any speed. I have to look at that. I mean, does it have any F? It has 0.5 F coming off of. Okay, yeah. So it's got 1.9 from the CXO Tabor, um, and then -2 from the Maelstrom, minus 0.25 from the Strange Ordination. And yeah, I mean you're not necessarily you're usually not taking chains to play the Strange Ordination, but
Mm-hmm. And you.
the go ahead.
Oh, so the Maelstrom is it typically a play?
The Maelstrom is very dependent
Very dependent.
on
Okay.
because not only does it give you because Maelstrom's a card where not only am I giving myself two chains, depending on what my board looks like, I am time walking myself and chaining myself, so it better be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Bobbeth does have 14 pips, so it's not necessarily lacking there in pips, but the large amount of its pressure that it generates is from its board. How it's going to be winning the game is through its board, not just simply through playing its actions or going through that. It will be using its board, and time walking yourself with the Maelstrom can be It, truly, I've lost games to it, where if you use the Maelstrom and it isn't high enough value, you're just gonna lose the game. So it's very often a discard, or maybe you hold it. It sort of depends on how much creature control they have in their deck too. If their deck where they're looking to, if I think they're gonna Savage Clash soon or Gateway and then play a bunch of stuff, then maybe Maelstrom's a hold. But generally, it's a discard.
Mm-hmm. No, makes sense. And I love how Maelstrom is sneakily a card that really rewards you for handcrafting, right? Like when you have to play Maelstrom or you get Maelstrom played against you, it's an awful lot, much nicer to have a hand that's, 5, 6 cards of the same house and lets you kind of get through a glut of maybe creatures on the top than having to work through a 2/2/2 in that moment if you were kind of leveraging your board that was somewhat muddy. Um, yeah,
Absolutely,
yeah. So
absolutely.
very cool.
Which is something where Maelstrom with bubbles and all the sort of put things back to the top of the deck. I actually had There was a match against Ashitaka in season 4 or 5 where I think I bounced Director of ZYX three turns in a row, much to their own chagrin. Um, but that was I think I lost that match anyways. But that was quite enjoyable to keep bouncing that Director of ZOX right back to the top of the deck, no matter what they played next.
I must have been playing against boss Eric Starter, Eric Stoddard, Eric
Yes,
Stoddard.
I think I was playing against Eric Stutter.
Yeah, which has to be a vanity name, right? They got into the algorithm. I think this is maybe some old MTG trivia, but there's an Eric Stoddard in MTG lore. Yeah, maybe you're familiar, maybe not. But I
I am
think
not.
I think it came from a reference to one of the original designers, who had a daughter and was named Eric, and the card was named after Eric's daughter. So, so fun
I
one.
see.
But I'm not sure how Eric's daughter made it into the naming algorithm for Keyforge, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was a nudge from E.O. Garfield for that one, which would be fun.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised with that either.
But
There we
cool.
go. So you learned some trivia.
Some trivia, and the I don't know, overlay between Keyforge's roots and MTG's roots maybe lends for some interesting ones. I feel like there are some uh, sneaky links between the two games. There's the obvious one. They're both designed uh, by Richard Garfield, but I think they've snuck some kind of fun links in there too, which I would bet Eric's daughter is being in the algorithm is one of those, but maybe not. Maybe not.
Maybe not. I think that's a pretty safe bet though.
Maybe not.
But yeah, I think for Bobbeth, it has a lot of cool pieces with like the 6 Tabor and the Triska with the Unity or Discord. Those can put in a ton of work. And Bobbeth specifically shines against non-DT decks, as a lot of DT decks too, but it's not really a Tide War.
Yep.
The Triska and Tabor together can create some really funky turns, like with a flash freeze. And a lot of the creature control in Bobbeth is coming from bounce and um, exhaustion, and the Echo Pearl has to put in a lot of work.
Hmm.
So like timing your call to void properly to get to really make up for that one lost amber. And there's a lot of just really finicky things in here. The Yuri and the Circumspect with Larry the Lake, as well as a Shield You Later and then a Teresa, as well as a Shifting Battlefield to make sure it has Star Alliance and Unfathomable Neighbors. That Urian can very, 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 very quickly take over a game.
Ooh, that's a cool interaction I hadn't really thought about. But you have the shifting battlefield, which, I mean, the Trace is awesome with that, right? Sile it up next to whatever house, and then you've also got the Triska that you can move over to a flank and then
Yep,
plop down your Urian nice and ready, right? So super cool.
exactly.
Um,
Yep.
or move some taunts around. So yeah, really really cool, really cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is like what thorium plasmate could have been. I don't know, but as a boost, but also just so exemplary of like the amount of value that is there to be eked out of some of the smaller effects. And I think you look at shifting battlefield. It looks like you're like, okay, it's kind of unassuming. Maybe I get a pip. Maybe I capture 3 at most. But there's just a whole lot you can do with it uh, in a set. In this set in particular, where the order of your battlefield just really matters a lot. Your battle line really matters a lot.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
no, absolutely. And Teresa's really a star player. It obviously has selective preservation, which has some manipulation. It's got a Hadros wall that you can help manipulate power with. It's got an officer's blaster. Um, that's pretty much it. But there are some things to manipulate the powers and really try and maximize your selective preservations.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, e- the Dry the River really picks up a lot of the slack that the Amber Control lacks in.
Yeah, it totally does seem as like does play out as a Amber Control card. I have a Dry the River deck picked out as well. The Complex Haven Mayor, which comes in right around the same SAS as Bobeth at 67. This actually has 2 copies of Dry the River, so you're very often seeing it. I jammed
Twice
this
as good.
twice as nice. Though
Twice
when
as
they're on
nice,
the
exactly.
the once they're on the board, it's not an extra dry river. It's just the same old dry river.
It's a slightly drier river.
Slightly drier river. You need to pay 3.2 chains to raise the tide and reap at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah. Um, but I will play this deck in the competitive queue on TCO, and it does very well against decks from any strength that want to use their board. You know,
Yeah.
like if you don't care about your board and you're just playing pips, like it's going to be a tough one for me. That's fine.
Yeah.
But every deck's going to have some good matchups and some bad matchups. Especially if you're talking ones that are in the 67 range, like having a bad matchup is excusable. But I mean, it'll punch up. I've played decks in the 90s and just said, yeah, you're looking to utilize the board. It's just not happening. You either end up
Mhm.
getting buried in chains, or my very situational seeming board control can get a lot of work in, and the dry liver plays a big part of that. Um, Especially when
And
combined with things like technobabble or my own key cheating and
mhm.
Ulthbert device, which is really spicy in there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said about cards that inflict chains in adaptive. Not only because understanding how a deck operates when chained, they do operate very differently. Right? Operating on a 5 card hand or a 4 card hand is a very different deck than operating on a 7 card hand or 6 card hand. And so having things that mess with that, and then also those become considerations once you get to chain bidding, can be, you know, it's hard math to do, but it can really impact how the third game in adaptive will play out.
Yeah, totally.
Again, binding irons is the same thing.
I I like to one of the things I used to like to say, and it's still true. But an adaptive match, and I think we kind of missed hitting this note earlier on. But in an adaptive match, there's sort of three decks involved, right? There's my deck, there's your deck, and then there's the deck with chains. Um,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
and in a lot of ways, that can play like a completely different deck. And if you're in a scenario where, especially with you're in a scenario where there are a lot of chains awarded, then it can really be a big benefit to knowing that deck. A deck, yeah.
absolutely. I think there was one match I had where I mean it was overvalued, but I think there was quite a few chains on Bobeth that I ended up taking it with, and that did win that game. I did win the game. I think I was down to a 4 card hand size. Um, which, like I said, was probably misevaluated on both players. But was down to a 4 card hand size, and it won that game because it, well, basically drew a Star Alliance, and they didn't have an answer for it right away. Um, so decks look very very different on smaller or larger hand sizes.
Yeah, super different. Especially, I mean, doubly so if you are playing a deck that interacts with the tide, and chains are a resource that you have to manage during the match, right? And that doesn't
Hmm.
necessarily mean, I mean, that can extend to decks that play against a DT deck, right? We saw in the CAGI finals, um, Quick Draw in game three, taking chains to raise the tide while playing an AOA deck, just to force their opponent to spend chains, realizing that their kind of natural tide takers had been used up. Um,
Hmm.
uh, saying, oh, okay, I have an advantage currently on the board. You're going to need to take chains to maximize your cards, and kind of press that way. Um, yeah, yeah, it's a really interesting kind of resource, and I think people have an aversion to chains, and I think that's one of the things that gives folks a hang up on adaptive generally. Um, I'm curious too what you think. I definitely appreciate the argument that high chain counts, especially from a bid, can lead to maybe a swingier game. But I don't mind. I don't mind low chain counts, especially in like even in like the 5 to 8 range can still be lead to some very like uh, can lead to some games, or leave decks in a very consistent state. Uh, I think. I don't
I
know.
I think there. I mean, I am not. I am someone who is pretty liberal with chains, and I think especially like if you go to like seven, if you go to 7 chains or 8 chains, is is 2 cards really gonna make or break a game? It could, but you know, you are the chains are there and do provide some form of leveling, where if we're just assuming that every card is coda and they're all just counting pips, and then each chain is 1 less card or 2 less cards or whatever, then each chain is worth an amber in that case. And if a deck is a key behind, 6 chains should equalize that, where it should be close race in the end.
Mm-hmm.
If every card is a do nothing with a pip, then on just mathematically they'll be even in the end if one deck is 6 amber behind. Keyforge is in a game of just pips and just playing cards that do nothing, which can introduce some of the swinginess. And some of the swinginess really comes, I've found, with decks that are board heavy. Board heavy decks will feel a lot swingier than action based decks with chain amounts on them.
Interesting. Interesting. I guess that makes sense. Or that they are impacted by chains even more, or can be. I guess can be is where you get the swinginess, right? Because you can.
Can be, yeah, because
Mm,
it's sort of it's also one of the it's a feature, maybe a bug with Keyforge, which is clumping, where hand shaping is great, but if you naturally open a 6 card of one house hand on turn one, every turn thereafter is going to be more efficient,
sure.
right? The job of handcrafting, half that house is gone, so now the percentage makeup of your deck, every other card you see later, is getting you closer and closer to a 2 house deck,
Yep.
which is just, it's a nature of Keyforge and can lead to a lot of high rolls, and chains sort of bring clumping for board decks. The clumping with chains is slightly more noticeable because if you want a board deck, you're trying to establish a board and use one house or 2 houses repeatedly to gain advantage. It's a lot harder to generate full boards full of creatures when you're only playing 2, 3 of them a turn, and subsequently they're dealt with and whatever, as
Mm,
opposed to maybe playing 3 or 4 if you're handcrafting well.
interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way before, but that's a really, really interesting kind of lens. Like like it's not just the initial 6 card hand and you play out 6 cards and you're like, yeah, this is the best. I got a 6 card hand, but now also my deck is just better than yours because it's streamlined for the rest of the game. Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yep. No, I mean, like math. If someone opens a 6 card of one house hand, they will statistically, for the rest of the game, have better draws than you. Right? They'll just be playing bigger turns because that's the percentage makeup of their deck.
Interesting. That's interesting. Hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any kind of balancing mechanism. Like you're then incentivized to go back into the 6 card hand house, and sure, like maybe you drew one or two more, so you play out those, and now your deck is even more streamlined. Um, but until you, well, I don't have a fully formed kind of point in favor of the natural balancing, but you know. TIS. This is Keyforge. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, I think the game naturally balances itself too, right? 'Cause a lot of the cards are going to be action cards. If they're creature cards, they're going to be there's lots of ways to blow up creatures in Keyforge. So it's sort of it is going to increase your chance of having larger turns, but you know, it's also one of those things where most decks, if they have like highest of high rolls, are probably going to win the game unless they're majorly outclassed. So if it's a competent deck, if it's a deck that's competent and competitive, for the most part, generally speaking, it should win games it high rolls in.
Yeah, I think
So
that's pretty true. I mean, I think, and this kind of gets at like, oh, are there good adaptive decks or are there bad adaptive, and are there bad adaptive decks? But I think yeah, a lot of your stronger Archon tier decks, if you look at their power curve distribution, if you will, like there's some overlap, and there's room for like a high roll to beat a medium roll or a low roll from another deck for sure. Yeah.
100%. I think most 70s, and a lot of high 60s, depending on set matchup too, right? Oftentimes like the slightly lower SAS decks are more matchup dependent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that can be a factor too. But generally, if a deck high rolls, it's going to be generating a fair amount of advantage.
Yeah, totally.
Hats off to the designers of Keyforge because most Keyforge decks are very competent.
Yeah, I think it's kind of I don't know, amazing when you kind of step back and think about it, right? Because you're like no one. Well, I don't want to assume too much, but the the algorithm was kind of let loose. Let's say let loose with some fine tuning, but there wasn't. There was playtesting, but there wasn't like, hey, we're gonna get the best players around to sit down and like imagine what the world championship meta looks like and determine whether or not it's balanced. Okay, we're going to do some work and try and balance for power level and make sure things are fun, but we're not going to like go deep, generate a million decks, and look at the kind of outliers in the power curve spectrum and see how they smash up against one another. That sort of like power level testing and balancing, I'd be surprised if was really happening. But here we are,
Hmm.
playing leagues with a lot of the strongest folks around, and it's not like there's like, oh, that's the absolute best deck. We have the highest rated decks. We have decks that are known and very strong, but there
Hmm.
are there are new decks winning large events with lots of really good decks in them all the time, which is really cool.
Absolutely. And the I know I think was it with the budget episode with Orion, which was last week. One of them I know you were talking about, and QuickDraw had brought up the point where if you ask like all the every single player in the KFPL what decks in Keyforge are the best decks,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna get a wide array of answers. And there's gonna be some recurring themes. There's gonna be some popular names that are in there, but there's not gonna be one answer because Keyforge is you know a game that is fairly, well realized.
Totally, totally. So hats off to them. I love it. And yeah, Yeah. So I don't know. Any other kind of any big points you want to hit? Make us dry the river specifically, or DT and adaptive more broadly.
Well, I think more specifically on adaptive
Mm-hmm.
is that I think when you're looking at selecting, adaptive decks, you know, people always, people ask the question, what should I bring to adaptive? People always get the answer, oh, like, you know, decks that are trickier or whatever. But I mean, the big thing really for adaptive is familiarity and knowing deck matchup. Um, One thing that's nice about DT in an adaptive lens is that you generally already know how a deck operates under chains because the tide, where the certain things. Also, welcome in Ketzer. Yes, absolutely. DT best set. Hopefully, we can get some of that in the chat. As not only am I on the Sloppy Lab Work podcast, Ketzer, I'm also specifically talking about Dark Tidings and Adaptive.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Welcome in, Ketzer. We came to the right place. Totally.
Um, because when you get to game three and it comes down to chain bidding, and you have to say, do I want a deck that I am not familiar with against my deck, either chained or unchained, is really going to come down to you understanding what your deck needs to do to win and what what kind of things stop it. Because, and I think I can't remember who said this. It was in one of the player interviews. And it was quite a beautiful description of Kagi. I think it was in the Ashitaka Not Tonight semifinal. But they were talking about how in adaptive you're not playing against your own deck in game two or game three. You're playing with your deck, where both players really are, they might be playing the other person's deck, but the deck across from them is a double agent because you know exactly how the deck operates, you know what it's trying to do, what it's trying to win, what its outs are, and throughout the whole game, it's telling you, you know, in obviously the other person's trying to pilot to win, but it's helping you along the way to win because what cards are left, what's left in the Archon deck, like what all the strategies are. So really, you're playing with your deck as well in the reversal and adaptive best of one final third game. And I think it's a really nice way of looking at the format as not reversal. Well, reversal has the same thing, but it's not just someone else is playing my deck or I'm playing someone else's deck. It's now you're playing with your deck from a different angle.
Yeah, totally. And that kind of gets at some of the things that I really look for in choosing an adaptive deck, right? Like I'm looking for decks that have some non-obvious strategic decisions or have holes that are not necessarily obvious, but things that I can play to exploit. Um,
Hmm.
and most of my go-to adaptive decks, like yeah, I'm totally aware of what their holes are, and in games 2 and 3, it comes down to like let me kind of yeah get a foothold in this deck's hole and try and win through that, as opposed to, oh, thank you for your deck, I will make it mine and do Keyforge things now. It's like
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yep. And pretty much always how you win in adaptive matches is maximizing your deck's weaknesses,
Mm-hmm. And
and vice
you
versa. The opponent's trying to do the same thing.
totally and you had mentioned before that the French players in particular were kind of lobbying you for a logistics change. Um,
Yeah. So
yeah.
actually, I know we didn't talk about this, but on the so we'll use a segue and also go into another. We'll have a segue train. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but in the Kagi server, I think before I took over, um, but the French players from the AFK, they are a fan of playing. I know they do this in their own leagues. They do adaptive where the first game is reversal, and then the second game is Archon. which is a very interesting take on it. Because one of the things currently is that your opponent gets to see you play your deck first. So there's in their version, you are much more rewarded for having a tricky deck
Mm-hmm.
because they don't get to see you do any of the tricks first. So they're entirely you were giving them a deck, you're throwing them in the deep end, and you're saying, swim.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think is it's there's some real benefits to it. There is a poll currently for a possible format change this, well, not necessarily this season, just sort of testing the waters on a possible format change in the future. Um, but that is something that really I think highlights a tricky adaptive deck as being a good adaptive deck. But also highlights player skill
Hmm.
for how quickly can you pick up a deck? How quickly can you unlock it? How quickly can you understand what its game plans are, and how it's trying to win a game, which is absolutely a big skill. I think it's slightly the reason why I personally have slight aversions to that or reservations about it. Not against it. I just have slight reservations only because I think it becomes a little bit less new player friendly.
Mm-hmm.
Where one of the big draws of adaptive as Kagi as a league is I really think it's a very open space, and it's a really good place for people who don't have or don't have Archon Soul level decks, maybe are intimidated at for something like the Nordic Keyforge League or Triad, um, or something as complicated as Moirai. I think it really does, and it really is a good format for people can still be as sweaty as they want in adaptive, but the casual and the new players and the people who maybe aren't as competitive can still take away meaningful things from a match and still have a shot in any given match.
Mm-hmm.
So I think having it be reversal first removes some of the accessibility that the format has by not allowing, meet the slightly less sweaty players to be given that exposure to the other player's deck. And I mean, it's one of those things, right? I mean, I think that the idea of that format is it makes the rich richer. People who are already good at that are going to gain more from that Archon game against someone who isn't as good as that. Right? They're gonna learn their deck faster than the other person's gonna learn their deck.
Yep.
And then that also means part of that is they're going to be better at reading that deck's game plan upon picking it up the first time. But that other player may not be able to do that at all. And I think that it has the possibility. Now, I'm a very competitive player. I love competitive formats, but I think it creates more opportunities to create a feels bad environment within a match.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I was gonna say sort of a similar thing. It opens the door for some feel bads. And is it fair to say I think you're you're taking by playing Archon first instead of reversal first, maybe you don't allow for it to be quite as skill testing as it could be. But big but there. Um, the skill testing nature or element that gets added by playing reversal force first is maybe mm, let's say kind of the lower hanging fruit on the skill testing tree, right? It's not the meaty like deep sweaty strategic kind of decision making stuff that you're trying to really get at. It's just like the well essentially like, are you new? Have you seen these before? Kind of like, can you like stitch together the tactics? Because I don't think that
yeah,
a lot of the seasoned veterans are going to trip up on the tactics, like the one turn maximizing this one turn tactics. But it's more you're testing their ability to like see the game plan from start to finish, right?
yeah, and I think I think if the goal of Kagi was to be, or sorry, I shouldn't say Kagi specifically, but if the goal of the format was to be as competitive as it possibly could be, I think reversal first probably is the right way to go
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
because I think you are introducing, because when when designing a competitive format and you're trying to make it as competitive as possible, part of what you're trying to do is create as much skill expression as you possibly can. So the more areas in which players have to use their skill now, and like this exists in Archon too, right? In order for your deck to win, you have to exploit the other you have to play around the other deck's game plan, executing your own. But Reversal First is now taking that of, I know how my deck plays, so I know its weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of six of one, half dozen's the other.
Yeah, that's really well said. I mean, there was a Time Shapers League a little while back that ran Newton, and which is like adaptive best of three, but without the final game. You allow for ties, right? So you play an Arkham game and a reversal game, and they
Hmm.
in this league there we alternated which decks which game you played first, whether it was Archon first or reversal first. Um, and for those rounds that were Archon first, I tried to bring decks that had I guess a non-obvious weakness. Am I saying that right?
Hmm.
And then for the reversal first rounds, I brought decks that had a non-obvious strength, right?
Yeah.
And so it kind of just turns it on its head, right? Are you playing against? Are you trying to set it up so that it's, you know, kind of tricky to figure out how to pick this deck apart, or are you trying to bring a deck where it's kind of tricky to figure out how to make this thing work, um, and kind of ask different questions. And I guess the only other
Yeah.
thought I had on that, sorry, is like there's there's a deck that I was bringing for adaptive for a while that was an Epic Quest deck, and I love Epic Quest because you look at it and you're like, is this gonna work? Like, I don't know. But when you see somebody make it work, then you're like, okay, I believe it. I can lean into it in the reversal game.
Hmm.
But you know what Epic Quest does in the reversal game. It's not a question of like, okay, I've played 7 Sanctum cards. Can I execute the turn this thing sideways and forge a key? It's like,
Hmm.
should I believe that there's a key at the end of my efforts as I'm archiving and waiting for this thing to line
Yeah.
up? Yeah.
There's a competitive argument to be made of, trying to reduce hidden variables and variance in
Hmm.
a competitive environment. So is giving the opponent as much information as possible for them to make informed and intelligent decisions in game two for the reversal. Does that introduce more competitiveness than blind information from both players? Possibly. I think there's arguments to be made either way. And like I said, I'm happy to run a poll on that as well, and see how people take it, because especially as a tournament organizer, I'm happy to experiment
Mm-hmm.
as long as the people who want to play in it. Aren't doing anything crazy here, but you know the sort of to springboard off your point of Newton when you were bringing, depending on whether it was reversal first or Archon first, which decks you would bring.
Mm-hmm.
You want to win game one,
Yep.
right? I think you don't want to be on the back foot of potentially getting 2-0'd. So you always want to win game one, and that's pretty much true for every iteration of this. So the the on the sign up form, there is a question of a change that I think I've been mulling over for all of my time for playing adaptive, and that is changing the game three rules in best of three, for the game three to follow traditional best of one rules, where in best of three, the player who loses the second game gets choice of first or second player in the third game, as you would in a normal best of three, and that occurs after chain bidding. In best of one rules, chain bidding happens, and then it's a random result. You flip the coin and see who gets first player.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the theories of current best of three adaptive is if you win game one, which you want to typically are incentivized to do anyways, you are then favored inherently in game three. So not only do you gain the advantage in the set because you have the chance of 2-0ing and the opponent does not,
Mm-hmm.
um, you also theoretically gain an advantage in game 3 where after chain bidding, you can decide first or second, knowing whether or not you have the chain deck. Because first player gets to shed an extra chain on a mulligan.
Yep. Or the
Or
first player essentially sheds two chains
sheds a chain for free.
for free, more or
Yeah.
less. Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, they shed 2 chains for free. So it's you are advantaged in terms of the effect of chains is reduced as the first turn player, and you can also saddle the second turn player with the chain deck to maximize the effect of chains on them.
Yep. And I think on top of that too, I mean, if there are three decks in the adaptive match in total, right? You have the advantage of being the only person who knows that third deck, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm like you weren't practicing my deck with chains, but one of my kind of go-to adaptive decks for a long time was a very spicy Coda deck, the Combo Grieve, and
Hmm.
and my sole strategy playing this deck in adaptive was, all right, let's go to game 3, and I have played this deck with every number of chains up to like 18, and I'm gonna like win the match based on taking advantage of that knowledge, right? Um, uh,
I got
oh, thank you muchly. Much appreciated. uh, but yeah, yeah. So there's that too, and I think those three things together, the 2 points you mentioned, and also the familiarity with the deck that gets bid on, has this kind of upward pressure on the spiciness, the spiceometer of the decks that bring, which I think you can argue is good or not for the format as well, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and like I mean, I'm not someone like I'm not gonna keep someone's deck choice in adaptive.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really care if you bring a 42. I don't really care if you bring like a 99. Um, I think the most fun is to be had when the games are close, game 1, game 2, and game 3. And I think low chains are more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
However, um, if you have like a really spicy Archon solo deck that you really enjoy playing, bring to adaptive. You know, bring to Kagi. Because at the end of the day, which is, and I know talking to Quick Draw, to their point, you're always going to go to game. You're most of the time you're going to go to game 3, especially if there's deck disparity. So really, both players can sort of just skip the steps and go and do the chain bidding. So in reality, if both players are equally skilled, then and both equally assess the deck, it's going to become a 50-50 anyways. So I think it's the main impetus for it is slightly dissuading the incentives to bring the stronger deck and push decks a little bit more to the middle of the pack.
Mm.
One of the ways I do that, and the league has always done it, is incentivizing 2-0 wins.
I actually
Because those,
really like that. Yeah.
and I know I've gotten some complaints. I have gotten complaints about the 2-0 wins being tiebreakers.
Yep. Yep.
Um, because I mean and one of the reasons that people don't like 2-0 tiebreakers is because if they bring a really good deck and they force 3 games every time, they might have a good win record, but they might not win. They might not get in because all their games are 2-1s and someone else has a 2-0 or two 2-0s. So I think incentivizing 2-0 wins and saying like, hey, like if you're rewarded for, it's a 2-0 win does not necessarily mean the other player was better. I think if someone routinely gets 2-0s, I think if there's a long if the more 2-0s you accumulate, I think compared to 2-1s, I think there's something more than just variance happening.
Sure. Sure.
Um, but incentivizing 2-0s is one way, also way to push to sort of flatten the curve on what decks are brought to adaptive. Because
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same can be said of people who bring really terrible reversal decks and just force a game three. I mean, that's less fun because now you're playing a really bad deck instead of a really good deck. Um, but same idea of forcing a game three.
Yeah. And I've definitely been on both sides of that tiebreaker. I'm sure I've cursed it at some point. Hopefully not aloud to you. I try to be tactful about these things, but I love I love this tiebreaker. Not because I think it's a great necessarily the pinnacle of indication for player skill, but because of the effect and the incentive that it creates for the decks that you bring. And I I like seeing decks that are, and this is personal preference, but that are pretty good but not outlier power level.
Hmm.
I think they make for some really interesting games when you can have those incentives that kind of give you a little bit of a benchmark for like what to bring. Um, so I think
Yeah,
it was
and
good.
I mean, like, it's not a hard and fast benchmark either.
Totally, totally, and
So I mean, you probably cursed it this past season, JT, because you just missed the top cut by a head to head. You and Mark H had the same, I believe. Yeah, it was now in stereo. I'm looking at the pods now. It was now in stereo. You and Mark H that had both had 3 and 2 records in your pod.
mm-hmm.
Now in stereo only had 1-2-0. You had two, and Mark H had 2-2-0s.
Yep,
But Mark H had the one of had the head to head over you.
yep. Had more head-to-head wins within the group, I think, of 2-0 or something. I don't know, something like that.
No, they had they had beat you.
Uh, can't be true.
You had
Can't be
lost.
true.
So with everything being the same, that was the final tiebreaker.
Nice.
Um, so you just missed out, not because of 2-0s.
No, I guess the 2-0s. Oof. I still remember winning Kagi 7.0, so I'm gonna have to go back and look at my records and double
That's true. You know what? That's true. You were a champion.
just double check. Yeah, just
Yeah.
double check. Um, yeah, it's cool.
But
I remember the moment where I think I had a potential 2-0 that turned into a 2-1, and it was crushing. It was like I fought with Eunonia into a creature that had a power counter that I don't know, just blanked on being there, and it went from
hmm.
like, oh, I killed your, so in my brain I'm like, oh, I kill your dude, gain an amber, fully heal my dude, to like, nope, my thing just died. Like,
Oh no.
oh.
Oh no.
Uh-huh. And that was
Yeah.
that was that was that. That was that.
Yeah, and like 2-0s, I think 2-0s and adaptive are the worst. They're the worst of times, the best of times,
Mm-hmm.
because it feels amazing to get a 2-0 win, and it feels really bad to get a 0-2, which
Yep.
I think is the last thing you want for anything that other people take part in is for them to not feel anything. Apathy is the biggest killer. So getting if people are getting salty because of an 0-2, but they're also getting hyped because of a 2-0, that's great. And I think that's very good. Just that's good and healthy gameplay.
Yeah, totally. I may have said this before, but I think you could say that you could apply the same idea to sets as well. Like, I don't want every set to just have everybody be like, yeah, it was a set, it was fine. I think it's great that there are folks out there who are like, DT's not for me, it's the worst. Like, okay, that's cool. Like, you have your
Yeah,
favorite, I'll have
there
my favorite, and like
there are
this is
some
great.
people who are very vocal about DT in a negative way.
Well, we know the feels on this panel and the chat certainly. I see the DT best sets rolling through.
Yes, the DT is the best set.
Top two at least. Top two at least. I'll give you that.
I know see you're my top twos are swapped.
We can get along with that. I dig it.
I respect it. I
Respect,
respect.
mutual respect. Cool. Well, we are going long. Why don't we wrap it up there? Unless there's a quick last point you want to hit. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's 2 last points.
Okay.
So number one, uh adaptive is a really really awesome format, and I think it's open to everyone. It's open to all players, all skill levels, all decks. And if you are someone who maybe is a bit who's a bit hesitant to step into the competitive ring for online Keyforge, adaptive really is Kagi specific. I mean, Kagi is the only league running it right now. Kagi really is a really good home for you. And number two, DT Bessa.
Hey, can't argue with that. With the show notes, I'll put links to where you can find the Kagi channel on the Sanctimodus Time Shapers server, as well as the sign up for the next league. Yeah, we'll spam it all over the places. I want to also let you know, folks, that this episode of the Bottom of the Beaker was sponsored by Fagan's Pawn Shop. Price is so good, it's like stealing. You can find us streaming recordings, live recordings of Bottom of the Beaker Tuesdays at 9:30 Eastern right here at twitch.tv/sloppylabwork. Find recordings of our past shows and various streams over at youtube.com. Search for @sloppylabwork there. And for the very best content, 57 times distilled and scraped from the bottom of the beaker. Search for that phrase in your podcatcher of choice, and that's where it'll be. So thanks, folks. Thanks so much for joining us, Murph. This was a pleasure. Do you have any words, any parting words for the folks who are getting off at the last audio stop?
Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to me for the past hour and a half. Thank you for putting up with my my droning about Dark Tidings and my gushing of love for the set as a whole and adaptive as a format. Thank you so much, JT, for a wonderful, being a wonderful host, having insightful questions, you know, keeping us the wheels on the bus were shaky, the hubcaps came off, but we stayed, we didn't crash, we stayed on the road. So thank you so much for having me on, and I'm really sad Quick Draw couldn't be here for it. You know, maybe next week you'll remember the proper numbers and he'll stick around. But no, really thank you, and I love Bottom of the Beaker. I try and catch all of your live shows. I watch all the stuff on YouTube, and I can recommend you as a resource enough. You do wonderful content. You really engage the community, and I'm a huge fan.
Awesome. Thank you muchly. Love the kind words, and we'll catch you all folks around the lab. Stay sloppy. Cool. So, awesome. Kids have gone to bed. Let's play a game. Head on over to the Crucible. What do you say?
Perfect.
I'm gonna.
So I know we had talked about doing to triple Dry the River a game, but as much fun as that might be, I know for me, Bobbeth is not a deck I actually really like to play in Archon.
Okay.
Maybe I should have mentioned this thing, but Bobbeth is a deck where I when I started playing, I really hated it.
Well, there's got to be a story there. Yeah.
This is a story just for the YouTube crowd.
Okay.
When I started playing Bobbeth, I really hated it. I played 2 or 3 games with it, and I said, "This deck sucks. It's not fun." I threw it in the bin. Not actually in the bin, but I put it away with less played decks, and I said, that deck's not for me. And then, I joined Kagi, and I said, what am I gonna play? And I scrolling through my TCO. I had like 25 decks at that point when I joined. I just said, maybe I'll play a sec. I'll play it because the quote that Fighting Balloon had on the league document, which is the same one that's on there now, genuinely was what inspired me to play Bobbeth in that season.
What was the quote? Remind me. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So I will
actually. On the spot. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not under. I'm under duress.
No worries.
The quote is it's by Richard Garfield, and I often like picking a deck and trying to win with it, rather than picking a deck with the best chance of winning.
Gotcha.
And I really did. I said, well, maybe this is a chance. I'm gonna try and win with this deck because, and it was also adaptive was nice because I don't really like playing with this deck in Archon. I didn't really have a good time with it. but maybe I'll get something from I'll get to play someone else's deck, and I'll get to see them play it. And so playing it in adaptive really taught me a lot about the deck. Really taught me some of the fun things it can do. You know, how to leverage the advantage that I can get out of it, especially as a new player. Um, not really having a good grasp of hand shaping, not having a good grasp of like delta and like when to use board and how cards work together. And yeah, I sort of fell in love with it as an adaptive deck. And it really has become a deck that I, is always, when I think of decks that have personalities and I attach sentimental value to, Bobith is one of the higher ones because of, the journey that Bobith and I went through in Kagi.
Uh, I should have left the Zencaster going, man. That was good stuff. That was gold. That was good stuff.
I apologize. I apologize. I meant to tell that story for the podcast, but
No, that's an awesome story. I don't know. That's so cool how you went from like not really not liking the deck at all, and kind of let's say inspired by the Garfield quote and living the Kagi dream, like actually living the Kagi dream. So super cool. Yeah.
yeah, no, very much so, and the journey that I went on with Bobith really sold me on adaptive format.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Right on. And maybe sparked some of the DT best set early beginnings, early seeds, or was that kind of already there for you? Mm-hmm.
Had to get a drink of water. DT best set was already there.
Okay.
I think, and one of the big reasons why I'm such a vocal DT best setter. Ketzer, I'm like 98% certain Ketzer started the DT best set,
Nice.
and I was merely a megaphone for that sentiment. Because I stream and I do content. And Ketzer does content as well. If people don't know that,
Mm-hmm.
they have a really good unboxing of the Abyssal Conspiracy, I think, or maybe it's the official Key Racken. Um, but I was just I agreed with it, and I was just a megaphone because one of the reasons is that I didn't see at the time any people that vocally praised Dark Tidings.
Yep.
In fact, me as a new player coming into Discord, now I have opinions, and I'm active. So I got shit on for liking Dark Tidings. And it was a jarring experience from what I experienced in all the other Discords. Because this is like it was the first time I had encountered anything in the community that was unwelcoming
Mm-hmm.
or unfriendly in nature. Um, and it didn't really, didn't phase me that much. I got thick skin, and I've been on the internet. Um, it's whatever. People are allowed to have their opinions.
Sure.
Um, but it's one of the big reasons why I make an effort and I go out of my way to be vocal about how much I love it. So that it's all the whole idea of representation. Where if people see me doing it, they're gonna feel more comfortable doing it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Well,
feel validation in their own feelings.
yeah, and I mean, I definitely appreciate you being vocal advocate for DT and not being shy about trumping the opinion. Uh, yeah, it's not always the most loved though. I don't know. There was like just sort of this weird confluence of circumstances. It kind of came out, and there was like a stutter step on the deliveries, and the early folks who got hands on it said in a big ways that they didn't think it was super competitive, and then it kind of got wrapped up in the like I don't know, mm, mm, pandemic, and it was kind of people were like, oh, this is just the set that's here right now, and we're gonna be unhappy with it. Maybe
Yeah, and
I don't know.
it doesn't have the best yield experience, and it's if you're opening the average deck, I think the average ET deck is competitive. There's a lot of problems. SAS is not very good for it. So just at a glance, people are getting lower numbers.
Mm-hmm.
It's not MM, and MM just sets the bar for competitive decks across the board.
Yep.
Um, like heads and shoulders. MM is head and shoulders above any other set.
Yep. Just in terms of
In chip,
raw power level.
raw power level, if you go and open a display,
Yep. Like what
you're
you're.
gonna get way more competitive decks from MM than any other set.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's just true. If you're,
That
if yeah, just
yeah.
true. Yeah.
And like, that's a good thing, and it's one of the reasons why the game it's what is one of the reasons why the game survived the pandemic
Mm-hmm.
is MM.
Hmm.
So good things and bad things. I mean, I'm not an expert. What do I know? But I do think people had a lot of impetus to go buy and open MM.
Yep.
So and it coming off of it coming off the heels of MM, which was already, quite meta defining and game changing. And you go back to like better than AOA, but sort of in my opinion, better than Worlds Collide middling decks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like and slightly better than AOA, but sort of around the range of like middling AOA decks. I have a lot of fun playing middling AOA decks.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And there's some of my most they're my like middling DT and middling AOA are my favorite casual decks. I have a 60 status AOA that I absolutely love, and I will play, till the day I die at Archon events.
Nice.
But it's got Plague Rats, Nature's Call, Glimmer, Witch of the Wilds. Like it does cool things, but is it winning a Vault Tour? Absolutely not. It can barely win. It can barely win games, but it's fun to play.
Nice.
Um, so, I think it does have. Yeah, that's right, Ketzer. Competitive play does revolve like when you're playing any competitive game. Like if you're playing competitive Yu-Gi-Oh, the bar for value on a card, or how does this card impact the game now, is a lot more prevalent, and competitive decks will always lend towards that. Play effects, good actions,
Mm-hmm.
all that efficiency. So
Yeah. I mean, that was kind of like maybe what I did not say as eloquently before, but I think why Crush is so strong, and then why it makes it that much tougher to play decks that are uh, trying to get value from setting up a board, and then making stuff happen with that board, is it creates a pressure on the game to move away from, or move away from, like, yeah, I'm gonna set up this machine, and then uh, build up slowly to make value, versus having a bunch of play effects or a bunch of pips attached to my cards. Yeah.
yeah, and it's just the nature of games.
Yeah.
Just the nature of games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nature of games. Right on, right on. Well, all right. So maybe we won't play a triple Dry the River match, Archon match.
If you would, I'm happy to play Dry the River deck. I think a DT matchup sounds wonderful.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we could do. I would grab a Dark Tidings, a rando Dark Tidings from the old Random Access archives, maybe, and see what that leaves me
Would
with.
you like to play Reversal?
Ooh, okay, I'm down with that.
But I mean, like Reversal, but we're bringing some heat.
Okay, so like something spicy, but reversal. Mm-hmm. I could do that. I could do that. Let's
I'll uh
see.
I'll hit you with my deck of choice.
Hmm. My absolute best DT.
Oh, I didn't know we were going there.
Oh well. What's how many peppers in the spisometer are you thinking?
If I want the spiciest, I'll give you Judge.
I
If you
mean,
want.
you could do
Yeah, yeah,
whatever
yeah,
you
yeah,
like.
yeah. You take it. You take it.
Okay, okay. I'll play with Judge. I was just gonna comment that I'd played an adaptive match with, or I guess a reversal match with quick draw, where I gave him Lonely Cadell of the Forest, and just got decimated. Um, I was like, do I want to give this one over? I guess could. Evil Duchess is really fun too.
Well, I mean, maybe Judge isn't so bad a reversal deck here because it has done me very well in Kagi.
Mm.
As I was mentioning this pre-stream, but Judge is my 3 wins in Kagi this season.
All right, I'm gonna
Oh,
throw Lonely Cadell at it, and we'll see. We'll see. I have a cool. It's a cool deck. Triple Chelonia. No, double Chelonia, triple Gruen. So very very high burst potential. I think Not Tonight actually has a is it quad Chelonia deck, or is it 3? I think it's 4 Chelonias.
that's
Yeah,
wild.
it's just wild. But all right, so I'll make a new reversal game. Password sloppy. It'll be in casual,
Sounds good.
and I'll throw Forest in there. Lonely Cadell of the Forest. Okay, I've seen you play Judge a few times. We'll see how it goes. I think it's gonna be more. I think it's gonna be tricky one to play.
It is. Judge is, I think, also. So Judge really is. So I have two DT decks, which are two of my first decks ever. Um, I'll be very honest. I got very lucky opening DT at the beginning. With the Crusader Judge being one of the first DT decks. I got when I first started in the game, I got 3 decks: AOA and a DT, 2-player starter set. An AOA deck that was pretty unexciting was that one, and then Judge and an Evil Twin was the other one. And Judge is a deck that I could not win with for the life of me for a long time, months. Um, and it was just like I could sort of it was a cool it's something that I love about Keyforge, where sometimes you can sort of feel a deck
Yep.
where it's like I know there's more here. I'm like playing out this game, I'm playing out these hands, and I know there's something that I'm not necessarily I'm not maybe not doing the right thing, but there's something here to it, and I could feel that. And so like I kept playing it and I kept playing it, and eventually oh, invalid response from the API.
Oh
Oh, I
no.
need your deck.
Oh, I've got my deck loaded in. It's a reversal game, so you bring
Oh yeah, you're
Judge.
right. What am I doing? What am I doing?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, here we go.
Yeah, I have a few decks like that where it's like, and back when we had the tracker, I would plot my, the red bars versus the green squares, red squares versus green squares with the deck, and see it go from like, the first 10 games it's like 70% red squares, and then the last 10 games it's like 70% green squares, and you're like, there was learning that happened here, and that feels good, you know, totally.
Yeah, and that is very much, and it's something where I know Red is taking Judge into the KFBL
Mm-hmm.
as their DT slot, and it's one of those things where we have very personal attachments with our decks. They are a little bit of our children
Mm-hmm.
or friends or however you want to think about them. So I feel paternal over it. I want to see the deck do well.
Totally.
Um, so I think they'll do me proud.
I'm rooting for DT to make a splash in the format for sure. Ooh, look at this opener. Interesting. Hmm.
I'll make sure the.
I'll throw that one back. I might regret it, but I'm
Oh,
gonna
did
throw
you
it
want
back.
to actually? I don't know if you have open hands on,
Oh,
but
I don't. I don't think I did. Womp womp.
if you
Womp.
wanted to do that and show both of our hands, we
Could,
could
th-
do that if you want to remake.
could throw in a spectator. We'll roll with it. It's good. It's
Roll with
good.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Cool. This is interesting one. Guess we're going Star Alliance. Play this Lay of the Land. Oof.
Leoland is a great card.
Yeah. This is awkward. Awkward.
I know that feeling.
Don't love it. Don't love these three.
I will say, sometimes the game against Algernon was a really interesting game for Judge if people are interested in seeing gameplay of it, because the first like 4 turns were really awkward. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they were awkward, and it was sort of like, really trying to figure out how to get hand shape the way out of it is something that DT really shines on, but can be like, it's kind of like, hey, could this be a little bit easier? You know,
Yep.
could I maybe not work quite as hard?
Oh, interesting. Ugh.
Yeah, we're
Novu.
gaming.
Novu, huh?
Mhm.
Man, decision time already. Mm, I know what's coming. So let's go Star Alliance again. Did I get the
Ah,
thing?
man, that double amber hit play of the land. That feels so good when you play it, not so good when the other person plays it.
Yep. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
All right.
Doing the things. Doing some things.
Oh man, what are the tide raisers in this deck?
Take the chains every
Oh,
time.
there's a tide warp.
Yeah, the Tide Warp's fun. Tide Warp's fun in there.
Okay. That does actually change things, I guess. How quickly do we want to start bringing chains into this, right now.
Right this second. Oh my.
Right this second.
Oof. Okay. Archives a phase shift. That is very sensible.
Is that either a phase shift or the Chelonia? I figure with 2 Chelonias, and I think there's funkier things that can happen with a phase shift.
Mm-hmm. The phase shifts are great. I think the burst potential is going to be there regardless. The crude soothsayer judge, the may put some pressure on the board control, or the amber control. Excuse me. With the Chelonias, but already the Mecha Buoy, I have to make decisions, huh? Yeah, I don't love it. But
And Judge only has 2 natural tide raisers. Ah, okay, that's actually, it's not that bad. There's worse things that's happened in the game of Keyforge.
there are worse
Then
things.
the Herd is a really cool deck, really cool card in that deck.
Totally. I am gonna take the tide right back. We're gonna get ourselves a little tide war here.
All right. We'll call Starlance here, stun that Milliobe, and get some damage on it.
Nice.
And I can't let you forge.
You could.
I almost forgot about that.
Yeah. All right, Untamed. What do we got? Let us get some information first. Archive some things. Okay.
Theory conjecture.
Okay. Those are things in the archives.
I'm happy to give you some hints on here that it's really nice that with muddied archives generally do not matter for Judge.
Mm-hmm. There's
because
some
of the United Action.
The United Action's really nice here. And you have some sticky artifacts and such. Let's see, you've got the book. And then core, scroll, and cavern. Mm-hmm. Very notable cavern, indeed.
I see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really hoping you're sitting there with the like, oops, all this Star Lines is bad instead of the oh my gosh, all this Logos and Untamed is really good hands.
Okay. Gonna call Untamed. Wishing I had grabbed a Chelonia. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Christ.
Key Frog.
Man, no way to kill it in Untamed. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's keep this Tide War going, eh?
Nice. All right, that's a key. That's a key. Um. Hmm. 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 Already decisions. I think you're gonna not like this decision, but I'm gonna go for it. Um,
From the standpoint of your opponent, as standpoint of someone. Oh, okay.
from the parent of the judge, I think you
Gotcha.
might say I should have held that United action longer, maybe. Um, raise the
That's what you get
tide.
from it.
Play the book. Play this infighting. Dubious.
Okay. That
Knockdown
is a
Sonoma.
dubious. That is a dubious infighting.
uh, archive a thing and play this to get it out of the hand. Not sure if that was good, but we did it. We did it.
Right, because assert dominance the United actually can't use.
Right.
That's an annoying thing about in, uh assert dominance specifically when you're on United action turn. Because I wish I could just force it through.
I always feel like if the card is telling you to like do the thing, then you should do the thing. But it's not like you using it. I don't know, but
Yeah, I agree. But
have that same issue with remote access. Like always feel like I should be able to remote access their artifact on a United action turn. But
yeah,
rules are
agree.
rules. What are you gonna do? A roll's a roll.
I
Tide
know.
warp. Okay. Hmm. With each card you play, I'm like, I'm taking a different turn now.
Do I take the tide here though? Do I give you a free amber? That's pretty dangerous. I think I'm willing to risk it.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think we go Star Alliance. No on the archives. Gonna throw this guy down for a couple.
Okay, very nice.
Stun those duders.
Not very nice.
And I mean, nope. Not using
The
it.
answer is. I was gonna say you gotta throw it back.
Just throw it back. Yeah.
Throw it back in the book.
Throw it back. Go for it or don't go for it.
Go
No?
for it.
Go for it. Wow. All right. Okay. Do you shed a
Well,
you don't shed a chain, do you? If you whiff on
no,
the
you
book.
don't.
Oh man.
No, you don't.
Okay.
It's there are times there's genuinely moments where um you'll just be like, well, like I guess I could play like one or two cards and like use the Star Wars board, and like if I hit it, it's a huge upside. If it is, am I that behind? I don't know. So I think there's, especially statistically, there's usually a pretty good if the numbers are right.
I probably should have. I probably should have by rights Mm, we'll see. We will see.
Depends how infighting's gone. Yeah.
Okay, Blossom Drake. Interesting.
We are blanking the books.
No books, no mecha buoy, no nothing. Okay. Hmm. Wowza. Wowza, I say. So I'm stuck with the low tide, huh? Well,
Well, for now.
for now. For now. Get a pip here. Reap with the thing. Play another blank artifact. Big Drake. Big Drake. Yep.
Um, I'm gonna call Logos. I'm going to phase shift Ambermancy to
Ooh.
remove 3 over there,
Ooh, nice.
and not let you forge there.
Yeah, I should have probably been a little more wary of the Ambermancy, but very cool.
Yeah, I didn't even notice. I didn't even notice that. I drew that and I was like, oh,
Yeah, it works. It works really well.
does wonders.
Okay, I guess we're going Untamed. Knowing that, remove a stun on my Meliobe. Meliobe.
I always say Miliobe, but I know the pronunciation is not. The jury's still out.
Jury's still out. Was it Not Tonight says Meliobe? That's probably why it stuck with me.
Or if that's Polish.
Could be a little Polish bend to the
Mm-hmm.
to the card. I am gonna take the tide here. I don't know if that's for the best. But you have enough. You have enough amber.
I see.
And I'm gonna play this frog.
I see.
But I don't have the cavern, which is what you were expecting, I'm sure.
That was what I was expecting.
Yeah, and I'm making a really dubious hold, but we'll see if it pays off.
Spoilers, it won't.
Mm-hmm. Spoilers, it won't. Probably not.
I wish I could do slightly more here, but
Eddie
I'm
number
just gonna
2.
make it expensive.
Ooh.
So here's a thought.
Mm-hmm.
Oh god, I think I just have to win on tempo because there's a thought to like fight your key frog with the E die
Yep.
to negate the forge, but let you forge for 8. But I think putting you on key 3 right now is just it's asking for me to lose the game.
Mm.
Because all you would need, literally with the board all you need is a Witch of the Dawn in a Fangtooth.
So
I guess maybe like a fertility chant or something, you know.
my dubious hold was the witch. So we'll see, because I think I do.
Oh, that's actually
fight here.
yeah.
Fight here.
Yeah. Okay.
Make that key.
Okay. Yeah.
But now, do I hold this frog? I don't have the cavern. It feels like a decent hold. The thing is, though, Lonely's control of both artifact and, Amber and board is dubious. I think I'm gonna play it and force you to go out of your way to think about it at least. But
Well, Untamed. Take the tide. Back to chains.
Mm-hmm.
Slap that down. Slap that down.
Yup.
Fight there. Reap. And then just hit that to unstun it.
Oh, cool. All right. Interesting. So Key Frog in discard makes me feel a little bit safer.
Frog in disguise.
In disguise. I think I just go for broke here. You're gonna hit me with a submersive, most likely, but I can get over 12. So let's go for it.
Wow, I never knew that, Ketzer. Ketzer saying that what I pronounce as Taniwa and Tawiki are pronounced with an F sound, where the wa is.
So it's Tanifa and
Tanifa and Tofiki.
really interesting. I wonder what the origins of that are. That's interesting. Tanifa and Tawiki. Yeah. Any backstory or any backstory on that, Ketzer? That's pretty cool trivia. I really like the kind of pronunciation and like idiosyncrasies and genesis of the cards. It's pretty cool.
Man, I have submersive in hand. It is. You just went to. You had to go to above 13. Maori words that make sense.
Oh, right on.
Makes sense. Well, Eureka hit it anyways.
Still living large, you know.
Yeah. Well, good game.
Okay, a very sharp game.
That was a good game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two with very high attacking potential, but that's a very strong showing by Soothsayer Judge. And
it was a very comfortable win.
I'm like living the sloppy lab work life of giving the guest the lesser of the decks for the streamed game.
Oh man, that was so brutal watching that game for Orion.
Oh man, poor Orion.
That was brutal. I feel really bad. I feel really bad for Orion. I was like, really?
We Orion was on a great journey with DT2 because they're on our ABR team and had been playing lots of DT decks so far. And I think that one is, they're just like, nope, done.
Yeah, I know that. I think Orion's is I think the DT best set crowd will win him over eventually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He definitely has some reservations about the set, but I think you know you work him down long enough, you chip away at the hard exterior. It's like a coconut.
There you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
get to the milk. I don't know.
Exactly. Exactly. And in the milk, it's there's Dry the River.
There it is. It all comes full circle.
It all comes full circle.
Right on. Cool. Well, it was a fun game. I apologies that that lonely Cadell did not give you a better showing. But Judge.
No, that was good. I think that was
Judge was good.
that's definitely I had a lot of fun there. I think if it wasn't playing Judge, I think if it was playing a slightly slower deck,
Mm-hmm.
I could see it really putting once some pieces start to align, really applying a lot of pressure.
It has potential, and it can be very finicky depending on how the board control and Amber control lines up. But the burst potential is really strong, and if you somehow manage to get, Triska down. I guess we haven't seen Triska, but with the Tabor or with an open slot for the Key Frog, that's really the only way to pop the Key Frog on the turn you play it. But that can really open up a lot of potential. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I believe that entirely. I think I really love I just love Dark Tidings, and I love Bursty Dark Tidings decks. So it does look very fun.
Definitely, definitely,
Yeah,
cool. Well,
and hopefully you enjoyed playing Judge.
Judge is a lot of fun, and yeah, like I said, I've seen you play it a number of times. Unfortunately, the Fangtooth Cavern is still in deck. It's like a uh, uh, you know, a marquee card of the deck to me. I don't know if you think of it the same way, but yeah, I love seeing
Absolutely.
Fangtooth line up with that frog and the frog coming back. Super cool. And
It's also it works really well to like it's often because the board control is so finicky. Fangtooth sometimes is kind of like, all right, Fangtooth, you're gonna need to pick up some slack, and it's like I'm gonna be pitching my creatures, just enough to like get Fangtooth triggers repeatedly.
yep, yep,
Um, it's something that it becomes really annoying if which is something I look for when I'm playing as other decks. But like if they have a 1 power creature, man, that is that annoying. Like if they have a Fila, like a Red Penny or something, it's like, come on, really? Like, a helper bot, it's like, just get him out of here. That's actually one of the reasons why Thin the Herds can be so important.
yeah. Or
Um,
zap mowing a bunch of them down, maybe too. Yeah.
yeah, on like a United Action turn or something, or
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's lots of little tiny tools to help sneak things through.
Yeah, the United in action I've seen you get a lot of value of, and I felt like I cashed in on it very early, maybe for better or worse. Um, and I have the Data Forge in archives, not because I thought it was like gonna hit this game, but I just didn't have a better card to tuck in archives at the time. Um, yeah,
Yeah, like that can certainly happen. It's the I always feel like, man, I don't give the Data Forge enough love because there's a lot of times where it's like this totally could be live, but then I go through and it's like, well, I'm just gonna play for the pip and you know have a way with it. Um,
yep,
and Ketzer saying that they feel like both of us won that game. And it's because if everyone played more DT, everyone would win more. I know it sounds statistically unsound, but fact is, playing DT versus T is the only way for both players to win a Keyforge.
I don't know if they were setting you up for that, but either way, that came together well. I dig it.
Ketzer teed me up and had to hit it out of the park.
Delivered, delivered indeed. Yep, nice, nice. Yeah,
But yeah,
no,
I think Kudveld, my match against Kudveld specifically was it was very interesting watching Kudveld um, play the deck. I think there was, I'm not throwing shade at Kudveld, um, but there was definitely some like noticeable mismanaging of resources
hmm,
in the game,
mm-hmm.
and like really not valuing cards. So and it's interesting seeing that because I play it in such a particular style, and Kalos, my teammate, is someone who's really introduced me a bit more to like the tempo-y, rushy side of Judge,
Yep,
where it's like you play the United Action, it's not the first time you can get like any meaningful value out of it. Not using it as a combo piece,
yep,
just sort of like using the tools to like just sort of keep ahead of the other person and not use it to set up combos, which is something that which is a big learning step in me for how to play it because sometimes games do require that. I can't set up a big archive, a big kip or whatever.
mm-hmm.
Um, and so watching Gveld play it and watching their evaluation was really just it was quite fun.
Yeah, and I mean, it speaks to the depth of the set too, because you can look at some of these decks and I don't know, just take them in very different directions. Yeah, and have very different valuations of things like United Action. You know, is this a lot of folks are in the like, hey, this is gonna be a big turn with all the archiving at some point. I'm gonna lean into that, and other folks are like, nope, give me the new cards now. Like, play this thing, flush my hand.
Yeah,
Totally.
and both are right in the right situations.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
yeah, definitely right in the right situations, and kind of speaks to, I guess I'll use the word, the affinity you have, or some of your natural, I don't know, learned. Let's call them learned. I don't know, biases toward how some of these things should be played. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. Because I've played other, I love United Actions on Rare and Worlds Collide and in Dark Tidings.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those cards where I always want it to be what it is in Judge, but it rarely ever is, and rarely ever is that. But like, it really is a very good tempo tool.
Yeah, totally,
Um,
totally.
so I think it is well, maybe it may not always be as impactful as it, as like set has having giant archive turns or whatever, but I think it oftentimes can do really meaningful tempo plays. And I really like tempo and mid range as a sort of quote unquote archetype of deck play style.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it probably goes back to like my Gruul and Golgari mid range affinity and Magic the Gathering.
Sure.
But
Yeah, I couldn't help. I had to pull up a couple United Action decks that I've jammed a lot in the past. There's Prince Kleptogamer, which is one I'm working on now. That's got a Maverick United Action that's very much a combo enabler versus Light Stint, the Nurse of Protection, that has double United Action and is really tends to use those more as tools for gaining tempo bursts to really flood the board. Um,
hmm
so it's kind of cool to see them, like, both sides of them, or at least how I play those decks, both sides of them,
yeah,
both sides of the
and
card.
lots of sticky stuff. And like one of the big hallmarks is having artifacts in an off house.
Yep, totally,
Just sort of having like consistent access to something is big.
totally, totally. All right, Murph. Well, we should sign off here. We'll wrap things up. This is a lot of fun. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, it was enough. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm around. I know you have your calendars are very booked. You're very popular
Uh,
podcast and it's a recurring series, and people are, content creators are clamoring to get on the bottom of the Beaker.
they gotta climb down instead of up. I don't know.
Exactly. Well, and the walls of the Beaker are slippery. They don't clean it very much.
That's true. That's true.
It's hard to get out. Once you're in here, you're kind of
You're
trapped.
trapped. There's no getting out
You're
of the
trapped. Yeah.
Beaker. Right on. All right, cool. Well, thanks, folks, for hanging out with us. We're signing off the stream. Have you all a good night. We'll see you around the lab.